Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're digging into a story that honestly feels like a high-stakes action movie, but it actually happened in real life. It's Chapter 2 of your prose section, There's a Girl by the Tracks by Devin Canal. We're going to break down the whole narrative, decode the exact vocabulary you need to know, and uncover a seriously powerful message hidden inside this true story. Let's get right into it.
Okay, to really get this story, you have to feel the environment. Picture a frantic Mumbai commute. A massive suburban train makes a ridiculously brief 20-second stop at 6:32 p.m. People are just swarming out, pushing in, and packing themselves into 12 crowded coaches. The text calls this a regular scene, and right in the middle of this absolute crush of humanity is 21-year-old Roma Talreja. She's a call center executive, and she just barely manages to squeeze into a ladies' compartment. It's tight, it's suffocating, and the train is moving incredibly fast.
Then, out of nowhere, the inciting incident hits us like a shockwave. Our perspective completely shifts. Suddenly, we're on a totally different train, zooming in the opposite direction. People are gasping, screaming. The text drops this chilling quote. "There's a girl by the tracks," the voices cried out. Imagine the absolute panic. One second you're just heading home, and the next, you see a body lying helpless next to these rushing steel wheels. So what exactly happened to Roma?
Let's break down the sequence from the Think About the Text section to see how this disaster unfolded. Step 1. Roma was jammed between other commuters, literally just trying to find a safe sliver of space to stand. Step 2. In the surge of the crowd, she lost her tenuous foothold. Now, tenuous means her stance was already super weak and shaky to begin with. Step 3. Pure panic sets in. She reached for the steel railing above her but completely missed. Which brings us to Step 4, the terrifying fall. She was thrown entirely out of the coach. The roar of the train muffled the thud of her hitting the ground over a meter below, knocking her completely senseless.
Let's pause and do a quick check of your understanding here. The textbook asks, Roma tried to settle into a corner near the door. Was she right in doing this? Think about that for a second. Technically, standing by the open door of a speeding train is terribly dangerous. But look at the reality of a rush-hour Mumbai local. Did she even have a choice? She was just desperately trying to find a safe pocket of space. It's a really tragic reality of that daily commute. Enter our second main character, Baleshwar Mishra. He's a 20-year-old high school dropout, and he's the guy on that opposite train who spots Roma, lying there. When he hears the screams, the text uses a very specific, crucial word to describe what he does next. He acts impulsively. Now, acting impulsively means doing something suddenly, without thinking it through. His heart is pounding, and without doing any sort of mental math on the risks, Baleshwar leaps into action, grabbing the train's red emergency chain and yanking it down frantically. Now, tackling a couple more questions from the text to check your understanding. Whose voices cried out, and why was Baleshwar so impulsive? Well, those frantic voices belonged to the horrified commuters in Baleshwar's own compartment who had just witnessed the fall. And as for Baleshwar acting impulsively, think about it. A young woman is bleeding by the tracks. If he stops to weigh the pros and cons or waits until the next station, which is miles away, Roma might die. He had zero time to hesitate if he was going to save her life. Notice how Devin Canal, the author, ramps up the tension using these incredible action verbs. Baleshwar shoved himself to the door. He jumped off the train, tearing his old rubber slipper, and started to sprint back between the tracks. He was gasping for breath, and he finally found Roma sprawled by the side of the tracks. Shoved, sprint, gasping, sprawled. These aren't just dry vocabulary words. They inject massive energy into the text, making his frantic, desperate run feel incredibly intense and real to us. When Baleshwar finally reaches her, he desperately asks, "Behenji, aap theek hai? Sister, are you okay?" But nothing. Total silence. Why was there no response? The text reveals the grim truth. Roma had taken a devastating physical toll from the fall. Blood was flowing from a deep gash behind her head, and she was completely unconscious. To make matters worse, they were in an isolated stretch of Thane district, between two stations that were 5 kilometers apart. No help in sight. Just Baleshwar and an unconscious Roma. If you look at the Share Your Responses activity, we can really see the massive contrast between these two. Roma, a 21-year-old call center executive.
Baleshwar, a 20-year-old high school dropout from a totally different state, just in Mumbai looking for a job. Complete strangers. Different backgrounds, different professions, entirely different walks of life. Yet, right here in this life-or-death crisis, absolutely none of that matters. Basic human connection bridges that entire gap. Unfortunately, we quickly see that not everyone shares that level of humanity. The author sets up a really stark contrast between Baleshwar's heroism and the crowd's fear. When Baleshwar pulled the chain, he actually shouted out, "Let's go and help her." But nobody volunteered. The text says they had wary faces. They were afraid of getting involved, or maybe just afraid of the inconvenience. So Baleshwar is out there gingerly carrying a 50-kilo girl by himself, saying a silent prayer, while an entire train full of people chose to just look the other way.
That reaction brings us to a heavy but incredibly important vocabulary word. Callous. C-A-L-L-O-U-S. To be callous means being completely unconcerned, indifferent, or insensitive to the suffering of others. So in this situation, who was truly callous? Sure, the train passengers were fearful, but the ultimate callousness happens right after, with the motorists on the nearby road.
Just picture this absolutely heartbreaking scene. Baleshwar literally carries Roma across the dangerous tracks, pushing through thick shrubbery just to reach the highway. He's standing there holding this bleeding, unconscious girl, begging to passing motorists, "My sister is injured. Please help me take her to a hospital." And nobody stops. The cars just zip right past. It's a textbook example of the bystander effect, where everyone just assumes somebody else will help, so no one does a thing.
But then, finally, a breakthrough. A middle-aged tempo truck driver steps up and breaks that awful bystander effect. He pulls over, helps Baleshwar load Roma into his truck, and rushes them toward a hospital. And he goes even further. He lends Baleshwar his phone to call Roma's brother, Dinesh, who is just wrapping up work at a retail shop in Ulhasnagar. Thanks to this one driver's decision to stop, Roma is rushed to Divine Hospital in Ghonsoli, and her family is alerted. Now, once Roma is safely receiving medical care, Baleshwar realizes something. He says, "Oh, I couldn't thank him." The textbook asks, who do you think he couldn't thank? It was the humble tempo truck driver. Once he saw Roma was in good hands, that driver didn't wait around for a reward or even a pat on the back. He just quietly slipped away. Two total heroes in one day, both acting out of pure, selfless goodness. This entire real-world rescue perfectly mirrors a famous quote by the Dalai Lama. "Love and compassion are the true religions to me, but to develop this, we do not need to believe in any religion." Think about it. Baleshwar didn't stop to ask what Roma's religion was, what state she was from, or how much money she made. His actions were driven by universal, selfless compassion, and that really is the absolute highest form of humanity. So who brought this incredible story to our textbooks? That would be Devin Kanal. He's an English writer who frequently crafts short stories for journals and magazines. What makes this specific piece so impactful is that Kanal took a real-life news event, a tragic accident and a miraculous rescue, and transformed it into a gripping narrative. He captured it specifically to inspire young readers like you to step up and be braver, better citizens. And that brings us to our final, most important thought. The textbook asks, if Baleshwar had not come forward to help Roma, what would have happened to her? The stark, heavy reality is, she almost certainly would not have survived. One person's impulsive decision to do the right thing literally saved a life. So the next time you see someone in need, ask yourself, am I going to be the crowd or am I going to be Baleshwar? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into Chapter 2 of your 10th Standard Prose, There's a Girl by the Tracks. But listen, we aren't just going to sit here and memorize dry rules today. No way! We're actually taking the textbook grammar and vocabulary from this chapter and transforming it into a powerful real-world communication toolkit. Let's jump right in. So, I want you to think about this for a second. How do you tell a story that makes people literally hold their breath? In There's a Girl by the Tracks, we read about that absolutely heart-stopping moment when 20-year-old Baleshwar Mishra sees Roma lying next to the train tracks and he makes this split-second decision to risk everything to save her. I mean, that story is incredibly gripping, but why? It's not just about what happened, it's about how it's told. Thrilling stories rely completely on picking the exact right action words and building sentences that just drive the momentum forward. Here is our game plan for today. 1. The power of words. 2. Master your grammar rules. 3. The language reference detective. And 4. the story of Mumbai. Okay, starting with Section 1, the power of words, vocabulary, and action. To tackle the enrich your vocabulary tasks in your textbook, you've got to realize that vague words just don't cut it anymore. Think back to that chaotic scene where Baleshwar impulsively grabs the train's red emergency chain. Your textbook uses verbs like shoved, sprinted, and sprawled. Notice how these aren't calm words, they're packed with pure adrenaline, and they paint a highly specific, vivid picture right in your reader's mind.
Now, what's really cool here is how we can take that massive list of action words from your textbook and actually sort them into clear, bite-sized categories. When you organize your mental dictionary like this, observing, moving, holding, it prevents totally overloading your brain, and it helps you immensely with those practice writing tasks. Just look at the moving column. If you write that Baleshwar just went to Roma, it sounds kind of slow, right? But if he dashed or sprinted to her, suddenly you can actually feel his urgency.
Another amazing vocabulary tool from this chapter is understanding what we call collocations. You can think of collocations like word puzzle pieces that just naturally fit together. Look at this comparison. We say fast train all the time. It sounds completely natural, the puzzle pieces snap right into place. But if you say brisk train, even though the word brisk literally means fast, those puzzle pieces just don't fit. It sounds super weird to our ears. We might take a brisk walk, sure, but we take a fast train. Getting the hang of these natural partnerships is a massive cheat code to making your English sound incredibly fluent. Moving right along to Section 2, Master Your Grammar Rules, the Mechanics of Language. For the Learn Grammar Through Communication part of your chapter, I want you to remember that grammar is really just the engine that makes your sentences run smoothly. Let's look at subject-verb agreement using the VIP analogy. Check out the words everybody and somebody. They feel like they represent a huge plural crowd of people, right? But here's the trick. Grammar actually treats them as a singular VIP entity. Because they're treated as singular subjects, they get the singular verb with an S right at the end. So everybody knows, somebody tries. But if you use a phrase like a few, well, that is genuinely plural, so it gets the plural verb work without the S. Okay, let's look at another super useful grammar tool. Read these two sentences on the screen. There was heavy traffic. We were delayed. Notice how kind of short and choppy they are? When we talk or write using only these isolated, disconnected sentences, we end up sounding a bit like a robot. There's just no flow to it. But watch what happens when we use linkers. Since there was heavy traffic, we were delayed. So much better, right? Linkers, words like since, though, and although, act like little bridges connecting isolated islands of thought. They show you the relationship between two ideas. In this specific case, since perfectly shows cause and effect, it completely upgrades your sentence. Trust me, using linkers is an absolute game changer for your practice writing exercises to make your paragraphs flow beautifully. And the final grammar tool we need for our kit is reported speech. Now, do not let this stress you out. Let's demystify it by breaking it down into simple steps. It's basically just time traveling. When you're changing a live conversation, like Ram and Shashi talking in your textbook, into a story you're telling someone else later, you are time traveling. Step 1, you read the direct quote. Step 2, you mentally shift the tense backwards in time because the conversation already happened in the past. And step 3, you just write it out smoothly as a paragraph. You're just reporting what you heard. All right, Section 3, the Language Reference Detective, Unlocking Meanings. I want to take a second and validate something for you right now. As an English language learner, it is 100% okay not to know every single word. Nobody does. When you hit a roadblock, you just need to put on your detective hat. We have these incredibly powerful reference tools to investigate words, and knowing exactly how to use them is a total superpower. Let's look at the word compose from your textbook's Make Reference exercise. This one single word has entirely different meanings depending on the sentence it sits in. It wears a lot of hats. A musician can compose a piece of music, but if you're feeling really angry, you might take a deep breath to compose yourself, which means trying to be calm. Water is composed of hydrogen and oxygen. A photographer composes a shot. This brilliantly shows why your dictionary skills are so crucial. You have to investigate and find the exact meaning that fits the context of your specific sentence. Now, to be a top-tier language detective, you need to know exactly which tool to reach for. So here is a quick, handy cheat sheet for your reference toolkit. Need deep background info on a historical subject? Grab the encyclopedia. Need to know how to spell a word or check its exact meaning? Use the dictionary. Want to find a better, maybe punchier synonym for a boring word like natural? That is exactly what the thesaurus is for. And if you need to find places or maps in the world, you pull out the atlas. Simple as that.
Finally, Section 4, the story of Mumbai, language in the real world.
This directly ties into your Do the Project section. Do you actually know why Bombay was renamed Mumbai? Well, check out this timeline. It all started way back with an ancient temple dedicated to the mother deity Maha Ambiyayi. Over time, as generations and generations of people spoke it, the sounds naturally kind of blended together and corrupted to Mahambayi, which then evolved into Mumbai and finally shifted into the modern name we all know today, Mumbai. Meanwhile, the Portuguese who arrived there called it Bombaia, which means fair bay, and that's actually what gave us the name Bombay. It just goes to show you, language is alive, it breathes, and it is always evolving. Down at the very end of your chapter, your textbook has a suggested reading section pointing you to the Jathaka Tales, Gautama Buddha. There's this really beautiful quote associated with that reading. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. We learn our grammar, we build out our vocabulary, and we read these stories ultimately to build our capacity to understand other people. Just like Baleshwar showed that incredible selfless compassion to a total stranger on the tracks, our reading builds our empathy.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. You now have a communication toolkit totally loaded with dynamic action words, smooth grammar engines, and the detective skills to decode anything you come across. Language truly is your ultimate tool. So my final question to you is, how are you going to use it to tell your next story? Go out there, practice these skills, and make your words count. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and keep learning.
Welcome to this exam masterclass explainer. Look, I'm here to show you exactly how to extract maximum marks from the board evaluators for Prose Chapter 2, There's a Girl by the Tracks. If you're a 10th standard student sitting for the Karnataka SSLC 31-E English exam, I know you already know the story of Baleshwar and Nolma. But let me tell you right now, just knowing the story, that doesn't guarantee you full marks. No way. You've got to write exactly what the evaluator's red pen is looking for. So here's our roadmap to a perfect score. We're going to hit the evaluator's playbook, 1-mark MCQ quick wins, 2-mark value point traps, the 3-mark extract masterclass, and finally sequencing Baleshwar's rescue. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the evaluator's playbook. As a veteran board evaluator, I can tell you that simply summarizing the text just isn't going to cut it for a top score. You absolutely have to understand the rubric. This explainer is your direct key to unlocking the exact value points and half-mark allocations that we examiners actively hunt for when grading your paper. We really don't want to read rambling paragraphs. We're looking for surgical precision. Okay, moving right along to Section 2, 1-mark MCQ quick wins. Factual recall questions are an absolute favorite for the examiners to test your precise memory of the text. Consider this exact multiple-choice question that routinely pops up in board papers. Roma Talreja felt that she could never repay Baleshwar because now, under exam pressure, so many students try to overcomplicate things or just guess based on a vague memory. But here's the secret. For this 1-mark MCQ, the board literally only wants you to identify this one specific phrase straight from the textbook, risked his life to save her. That's it. Don't second guess it, just lock that exact phrase in.
You've also got to lock down your textbook vocabulary. Examiners frequently test the word callous. What does it mean? Well, it means unconcerned. Specifically, in the context of this chapter, it's used to describe those callous commuters of Mumbai who completely ignored the accident. Knowing this exact synonym is a guaranteed easy, quick win for you.
Pay close attention here. Section 3, 2-mark value point traps. Let's make sure you don't lose precious half marks, okay? Keep a very close eye on this because this is exactly where students routinely bleed marks on their written answers. A classic board question is, how did the tempo truck driver help Baleshwar? Most students just jot down a vague summary like, he took them to the hospital. Actually, scratch that. That's a massive error and it will absolutely cost you. You can easily see the difference between a vague, unstructured answer which only gets you a fraction of the points versus what the official evaluation scheme strictly demands. To get the full 2 marks, you need 3 specific, distinct value points.
I want you to memorize this precise breakdown right now. Stating that he offered a place in his vehicle, that secures 1 whole mark. Stating he lent his phone to inform her family, that's half a mark. And noting he did not expect money or thanks is the final half mark. See, that is exactly how an evaluator awards the full 2 marks. It's like a checklist in our heads.
Stepping it up to the heavy hitters, Section 4, 3-mark extract masterclass. These reference to context extracts require razor-sharp precision to lock in a guaranteed 3 marks. Let's master this. When you see an extract exactly like this on your printed question paper, "Sister, are you okay?" but there was no response, you're going to be hit with an A, B, C format that requires 3 distinct answers.
So to get that perfect 1-1-1 mark split, you must be direct. For A, explicitly name Baleshwar Mishra. For B, explicitly name Roma Talreja. And for C, clearly state she was unconscious due to the accident. Whatever you do, do not write a single rambling paragraph. Answer A, B, and C on separate lines. Make it crystal clear. Here is another high-yield extract. "Take the girl to Airoli," suggested the cop. But Baleshwar disagreed. If you get this extract, remember the specific value points for why he disagreed. Baleshwar disagreed because Roma's condition was serious, she needed immediate treatment, and that initial small hospital in Airoli lacked the necessary facilities and personnel.
And finally, Section 5, sequencing Baleshwar's rescue. Let's tackle the ultimate 3-mark heavyweight question, tracing the exact chronological sequence of how Baleshwar saved Roma's life. Again, you cannot just ramble in a long paragraph here. Evaluators absolutely hate hunting for points in a wall of text. You must logically string his actions together using the exact verbs required by the official answer key. Use this simple memory trick to recall the sequence under exam pressure. Saw, jumped, carried, found. First, he saw Roma falling and pulled the chain. Second, he jumped out of the moving train. Third, he carried her across the tracks to the road. Fourth, he found the truck driver and reached the hospital. Write these as distinct, bulleted points, and the evaluator will gladly give you all 3 marks. Before we wrap this up, don't forget this quick factual nugget for the objective sections. Examiners sometimes like to throw a curveball and test your knowledge of the creators. Just know that the author, Divin Kanal, specifically writes short stories in English for journals and magazines. So, what does this all mean for you? The crucial point to take away for your exam day strategy is this. Are you writing rambling paragraphs, hoping the examiner somehow finds the right answer in there, or are you writing scoreable value points? On exam day, remember that we evaluators are hunting for specific things. Structure your answers in clear bullets, use the official keywords we just went over, and make your marks literally impossible to miss. Good luck out there, you've got this.